Happy Friday, and welcome here to another edition of Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. We got a full show on tap before we get into the open of the show. Husker Online Headlines brought to you by our title sponsor, StayHome.Care. They're there for the loved ones in your life. When you can't be there for them, they're there for you, and they help you with simple daily tasks. Could be as easy as a ride to a doctor's appointment, grocery shopping, cooking, cleaning, you name it, even just providing companionship. They can be there for the loved ones in your life. Call them at 402-205-2233. That's 402-205-2233. That's StayHome.Care. But Sip, let's get right into it because we've got a A-lister, a big-time guest to lead off our Friday edition of Husker Online Headlines. Let's welcome in Andy Staples of On3 to the program. Happy Friday, Andy. It's the slower part of the year, but there's definitely still a lot going on.
No, I don't even, are there slow parts of the year anymore? This is, but once Nico hit, it just feels like everything sped up again. It was like, okay, we're just going to roll right into the season now.
Which is fine for our purposes, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Better than being bored.
Yeah, you don't want nothing going on. That's the scary part.
Well, Andy, we've got a lot of Nebraska questions for you. Obviously, over-unders came out this week. Nebraska's at 7.5. A lot of debate about Dylan Raiola heading into his sophomore year. I mean, just what's your big picture view of Matt Rule in year 3, knowing his history as a head coach in year 3s?
Yeah, we actually had a question on this on our show the other day on the mailbag show, and it was basically, given Matt Rule's year 3s, what's a reasonable expectation for success for Nebraska this year? And, if you look at Temple in year 3 and Baylor in year 3, they're huge jumps. They went from essentially 500 teams to double-digit win teams. And the question is, can he do that at Nebraska this year? I don't think he has to do that. I don't think they have to be a double-digit win team for this to be a successful season. Obviously, they're in a tougher conference than either of those teams were. But I think solid, steady improvement. Don't lose games you're not supposed to lose. Like, take away a UCLA type game from last year. And that's really all you need, because I do feel like Nebraska has reached the point where it is a competent football program. I think all of the stuff and I know Nebraska fans are scarred because they went through these years where you had all these one possession losses and all these bad things kept happening. When so many narrow losses happen, you realize, okay, it's not luck. This is a poorly run program. I don't think it's a poorly run program anymore. I think it's a very competently run program now. And I think that makes a huge difference. So I think get rid of, like, the UCLA game was the one, I would say, outlier of a game last year where you're like, Nebraska's going to win this. And they go in and it's like, what the hell just happened? Everything else you can live with. Like the Iowa game, okay, they were winning in the fourth quarter, but Iowa was good. It's okay. Iowa was at home. So it still was a very close game. So I think they're right there, on the cusp of more improvement. And then, look, we went through their schedule. If they improve quite a bit, double-digit wins is not off the table. Playing Iowa at the end of the season with both of them being fringe playoff contenders is not off the table. But they're going to have to show us that, through the Michigan game and the Minnesota game. Like, those are the ones that you got to be able to figure out how to win if you're going to veer into double-digit win territory.
Andy, in my opinion, there's probably very few people who walk the earth that are as equipped to answer this question than you are.
It's a barbecue question?
The question is, can Nebraska, and this is what it's always in the back of Nebraska fans' minds, I think, and nobody really knows, but can Nebraska get back? Can Nebraska accelerate as a program in this day and age to where Ohio State is, to where Oregon is, right now to where Penn State is? Is that Michigan? Is Nebraska?
I don't know about annually, but I do think they can get to where they're competitive with those teams on a regular basis.
Okay.
I don't know if it's like Ohio State has advantage, and Ohio State is an outlier. Ohio State's never been bad in its history. Like, there's no other program in the country that can claim that. And so that's a little bit different. But yes, I mean, when you look at the way things are going, the NIL era, the transfer portal era, there's no reason Nebraska can't be competitive at the top level every few years, because a lot of the things that were impediments for Nebraska that caused them to not be so good in, from the early 2000s to now, they've been taken away. Because like geography doesn't matter as much. Geography became extremely important for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not. Recent success, how many guys you put in the NFL in the last 5 years, mattered a great deal in the super team era, in the 2000, basically the Nick Saban at Alabama era. That doesn't matter as much because you can offer more money. So the things that kept Nebraska down, I think, are gone. Now they have to manage this correctly. So this is up to Matt Rule. This is up to Troy Dannon to manage it well. But it's possible to do that. And I do think, we haven't seen it yet, but I do think in the NIL era, whoever helps Nebraska get back where they want to go, whichever players that happens to be, and it will happen, those people will be legends, and they will be well compensated for that.
Yes.
Andy, Dylan Raiola obviously is a lightning rod topic too. Just the expectations on him heading into his sophomore year. We saw very good versions of Raiola at times, and then a freshman version of him at times last year. What are your thoughts of him going into year two, especially with maybe what appears to be upgraded receivers across the board, an accomplished running back in Emmett Johnson behind him, and ideally maybe the best offensive line Nebraska's had in a few years?
Well, and that's why I've seen, like, my co-host Ari Wasserman, I think he's a little more down on him than I am. My thing is, we have not seen him as a sophomore yet. The biggest jumps tend to come between year one as a starter and year two as a starter for quarterbacks. So let's see what he does this year. And like you said, they've put more around him. I'm thinking about Dane Key. Like, Dane Key's a guy that at Kentucky you thought, okay, this guy's all set to break out, and they could never get him the ball. Like, if Raiola can get Dane Key the ball, how good that relationship going to be? That's the thing I'm interested in. If you look at Raiola last year, as the schedule got harder, he got worse, and you would expect that from a freshman. Now, how much of that was the offense? They did change offenses in the middle of the year last year. I mean, essentially changed coordinators in the middle of the year, and now they're running Dana Holgerson's offense. So, can Dana Holgerson make it a more QB-friendly offense that helps him be better? Because, the last game where he averaged over 8 yards per attempt was the Purdue game. That was September 28th. Everything after that was pretty tough sled. And the Wisconsin game and the bowl game were fairly efficient. But he can be a lot better. He has the raw materials to do it. So we need to see, how does he handle pressure? Is he better this year than he was last year under pressure? Can he get the ball out? Can he get the ball out on time? If he can do all those things, then Nebraska will be better. I'm more worried about their defense replacing what they lost. They'll be new, obviously, with a new coordinator. But I do think we're going to see improvement from Raiola. The question is how much improvement, because if it's a significant amount of improvement, then we're talking about a pretty tough team to beat here.
Andy, I just got one more Nebraska question. What impact do you think, what's your level of familiarity with Dana Holgerson? What kind of impact do you think he can have?
Oh, very familiar. And, he's come into places and done really well. The one, probably the biggest impact you saw was that first year, the only year he was at Oklahoma State, where they liked the offense that he brought so much, they just ran it for like 12 more years with different coordinators. And
interesting.
He's one of the people who helped craft the air raid. He played for Hal Mummy and Mike Leach at Iowa Wesleyan, but then he worked with them at various stops. So he helped craft the air raid into what it was. He went away a long time ago from being a classic air raid coach, though. He'll have three backs in the backfield. He'll do a lot of different things. When he had Trevon Wesco at West Virginia, he liked using the tight end more, which was not something the air raid guys tended to like to do. So he'll adapt to the personnel he has and try to make the best offense with the bones of the air raid, but he'll adapt to what he has. And if they're going to be, if they have a good offensive line and they like the backs, they're going to run a ton. And if it's not going to be like Leach, who is only going to run if you have a super light box. Otherwise, they're throwing the 3 plays, that the Y stick, all the usual, so that little angle route with the running back. It's a lot more than that. So it'll be interesting to see what he wants to do with this group, because that was the thing with that Oklahoma State team when they had Brandon Weeden and Justin Blackman, but they also had some good backs. Like, he was running diamond formation with 3 running backs at times. When he was at West Virginia, he'd move Tavon Austin into the backfield and just hand him the ball. Mm-hmm. So he's really good at figuring out what do his players do well and then emphasizing that.
Andy, I wanted to ask you too about the future of the college football playoff, because I know that's a big topic right now. If the Big Ten and the SEC want 4 auto bids each, is there anything that's going to stop that from happening?
I don't think so, because I've heard people saying this. It's interesting because this is something I think Greg Sankey was worried about, the SEC commissioner, a few years ago. That is, if you did auto bids, does it open you up to an antitrust challenge from the other leagues? Does it say you were acting as a cartel? You're saying you're above us. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, we always talk about with the players and what would solve all these issues. Well, a collective bargaining agreement, because the players agreed to it and the leagues agreed to it. Well, in this particular case, the leagues are the college football playoff. They're the ones who make it up. And so if they all agree to it, I don't think you have anything to worry about, because they've agreed to it. It's not a CBA, but it kind of is, because everybody involved has said, yeah, we're down for this. And so I think the way you get to that is you give those leagues enough money so that they are happy about it. And you give the ACC and the Big 12, who have a little more juice, enough access so they're happy about it. And it seems like, and we don't know this yet because they haven't actually decided on it, but it seems like 2 bids for the Big 12, 2 bids for the ACC is enough to make them happy. And then, the group of 6, because remember the Pac-12 is coming back, they'll get 1 spot, but they'll also get more money. And sometimes just saying, hey, would you like some more money, tends to solve some problems.
With the auto bids, how much more valuable will the television contracts get for those 2 leagues, the SEC and the Big Ten, knowing the additional inventory, the protection, the possible play-in games, the SEC Big Ten, where you don't have to worry about like having a committee decide that SMU is better than Alabama?
It's interesting you asked that question, Sean, because I'm not sure we're going to get to a point where the SEC and Big Ten are renegotiating their TV deals whole cloth. Like the SEC, when let's say they add the 9th conference game, which they're probably going to do if the auto bids go through, there'll be more money from ESPN. Like, they'll tweak the contract, but they're not going to go renegotiate the whole contract. It doesn't run out until 2033. I don't know that in 2033, the SEC as an entity is negotiating a football contract. That may be whatever comes next, whether that's all of the leagues together, whether that's some super league that is made up of schools from different leagues. I don't know. But that's my guess, is the next time those guys go to the table, it's in a different form.
Andy, is this seating issue going to be rectified in time for the next round of playoffs, 2025?
We hope so. Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, came out the other day and said they support it, which I think that basically leaves the Big 12. It's sort of like in the bar when somebody says something weird and everybody just stares at them. So now Brett Yormark is the guy at the bar that everybody's staring at. I think everybody else is fine with it. It's funny because there's really no incentive for the ACC or the Big 12 to say, let's do a straight seat. But it's also only 1 year. So, like, how much leverage can you truly get from holding out on this when everybody knows it's better for the sport? Like, we published what it would have looked like if it were seated straight last year. It's a better bracket. Like, Oregon, the team that earned the easiest path because they went undefeated in the regular season,
right,
would have had the easiest path instead of one of the hardest paths. Penn State, which got rewarded for losing the Big Ten championship game with the seeding rules the way they were, would have faced a more difficult path. Like, that's the way it's supposed to work.
Can commissioners, I always wonder this about Sankey and Petiti, Yormark, Phillips. I know they're tasked with protecting the interests of their conference. Can they also think about the good of college football? Is it possible?
Yeah, and they do. Like, Sankey talks about that a lot. But the thing is, and I've thought about this a lot the last week or so, their job is still to take care of their conference.
Of course.
The paycheck comes from the conference. So you can talk all you want. It's sort of like, if you're a member of Congress, there are things that are good for the country that are not good for your constituents.
Sure.
You better take care of your constituents.
Right. Yeah, that's probably God. I just like to see it sway the other way sometimes,
Well, and that's the thing. There would have to be some sort of change at the government level to make that happen. And they've talked about wanting an antitrust exemption so that they can create these NIL guardrails. I don't think they're going to get that, because I think it would essentially be, you can blatantly violate the Sherman Act to price fix a labor market, which I just can't see them doing that. But what I do think is interesting, and I do think is something that they may talk about, because it's something that kind of already exists, and you can say, hey, look, this already exists for some sports leagues that televise games. Why not add these people who are kind of the same kind of business? And that is Cody Campbell, who's the billionaire chairman of the Board of Regents at Texas Tech, used to play football there.
Yeah.
So he's on the Donald Trump committee that they just created. What he thinks they should do is add college football to the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961, which is it's an old law, but it basically is what allows the NFL teams and the Major League Baseball teams and the NBA teams to sell their television rights as one. So, like, if they didn't have this protection, because it's an antitrust protection, if they didn't have that protection, like, the UFL could just sue the Cowboys and the 49ers and the NFL and say, you're acting as a cartel. This is a violation of the Sherman Act. And they'd probably win. And they're protected from that with this piece of legislation. You add college football to that, then all of a sudden, all of the leagues could get together and say, we'll sell this to ESPN, we'll sell this to Fox, we'll sell this to NBC. And because you're a single seller, you can sell it for more money. It's like, for example, college football now is like, you need a blender. And you can go to Target, you can go to Walmart, you can check Amazon. Mm-hmm. That's the Big Ten, that's the SEC, that's the Big 12 and the ACC. Okay. And you can kind of pit them all against each other to get the best deal. You want to buy NFL rights or NBA rights, there's one place to go.
One place. And
that means they can jack up the price because they have exclusivity.
That makes sense. Okay, we'll get you out of here on this, Sean. Our constituents would want to know this. Andy, is Nebraska an 8-win team, a 7-win team, a 9-win team? Where do you see them?
I think they're an 8-win team. Like, if I just look at the schedule and say, if the most average result of every game happens, what happens? I see 8-4. So I can go through the schedule. Cincinnati, Akron, Houston Christian, and we're not worrying about those. But Michigan's not a guaranteed loss. There's a coin flip in there. They should beat Michigan State. They should beat Maryland. Minnesota's going to be a little bit of a coin flip. They should beat Northwestern. USC's a coin flip. UCLA shouldn't be a coin flip, but we'll see.
It is.
As Nebraska learned the hard way last year. Now they've got Nico Iamaleava, and I actually liked what Deshaun Foster did at the end of last season. But then obviously it's a very tough end of the season with at Penn State and Iowa. So like I said, if it's just average result, I would see 8-4 at the end of this season. But let's say you do get massive improvement from Dylan Raiola, and you beat Michigan and beat Minnesota, and all of a sudden now you're looking at maybe 9-3, look at maybe 10-2. So, like, I would not expect a step back. I think a step back would be very discouraging. I think this is another step forward for Nebraska. I'm just not sure how big of a step forward it is.
Well, Andy, we appreciate all your time and your insight, and you and Ari do a great job with your show every day on the On3 channels here. When do you guys? What are your taping days in the off season?
So in the off season, we're Monday through Friday, 8:30 Central, and we're supposed to end at 9:30 Central. We rarely do. We tend to ramble on, but it's fun. Subscribe to the On3 Sports YouTube channel, and you'll get a push notification every time we go. I would, for Nebraska fans, I would say check out Friday's show because it's our mailbag show. The first question out of the gate was about Nebraska, and it was a lot of similar to the stuff that we talked about, and where they kind of fit in with the rest of the Big Ten. And I'm pretty optimistic that they are still climbing. So I think but there's such an interesting discussion because, they went through the hinterlands like they did. Mm-hmm. I think if I were a Nebraska fan, I would be wary of everything just because I lived through 2010 to now. But I think you should feel pretty good about what you've got going and where it goes from here.
I think so too, Andy.
Well, Andy, thank you again for your time, and I'm sure we'll be catching up again here later this summer.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you again to Andy Staples, one of the best in the business.
Wow. A lot there. All
right, let's reset. I'm going to get our sponsors in, and then we'll come back and reset Andy Staples and Headline too. But
reset.
Again, HuskerOnline Headlines brought to you by our title sponsor, StayHome.Care. Call them at their number at 402-205-2233 to learn more about the services they can offer for you, your family, your loved ones. We're also brought to you by Huel. And let me say, today's kind of a Huel kind of morning. We needed a little Huel.
Friday. Dead by the end of the week show.
It's your dad's birthday. It's my daughter's birthday. And we're trying to juggle live shows. And we made it here to Friday. It's May. But if you've never tried Huel, it is everything you need. It gives you energy. It's got protein. It gives you a fill to kind of hold you off for a meal. And it tastes good. That's the other thing. So it's healthy. It gives you everything you need in it. Almost like a meal in a lot of respects. Comes in a lot of different flavors. You can also get it in a powder. We're going to give you 15% off plus a free gift. You just got to go to Huel.com, use the promo code Husker. You'll get 15% off for trying Huel and a free gift. Again, that's promo code Husker at Huel.com. Thanks to Huel for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Headline Show. All right, I want to get back into Andy here as we go headline two. A lot there. But yeah, I think everyone with Nebraska is somewhat in this 8-4 camp. I mean, I think anything could happen though. This again could be anywhere from a 6 to 10 win team. I don't really see below 6. I don't. Which I mean, be a big problem if we did. But as we know,
that's continuing to walk through the hinterland.
There's 3 or 4 of these coin flip games that you just don't really have a read on. Iowa, UCLA, USC, Minnesota, Michigan. I'll put Michigan State in that camp because they're a Big Ten team. Cincinnati and Arrowhead. I mean, that and college football resembles a lot like the NFL. There's just a lot of games in the NFL like that every week too. Mm-hmm. And you see that in the Big Ten where
100%, Sean.
It's a lot of point spreads that are between 3 and 7 points.
It's a lot comes down to how much do you trust your head coach? How much do you trust the quarterback? Those are entities that I have a good handle on. I just don't have a great handle on the defense. I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't have a great handle on the defense.
I love the back seven. I love the linebackers. I
think I do.
I love the linebackers. Mm-hmm. I love the secondary group. I like Deshaun Singleton in a rover role by the line of scrimmage. I mean, and I think Sierra Wright and Andrew Marshall are going to be good corners. I think Hartzog and Buford are veteran safeties. I mean, they've got Watson Trent, Javin Wright. I mean, you go down the line, it's a good-looking defense. Vincent Shavers. And then you hope McGahee and McCullough give them something on the edge. Then up front, do they have enough muscle to play?
That's what it is.
In an NFL line of scrimmage league. That's probably what it comes down to.
The conversation about the secondary, and this is not, Andy didn't talk about this. We're delving off a little bit, which is fine. The conversation about the secondary has evolved. The secondary struggled last year, and now we're talking about it as a strength. It's a little, that's why it makes me a little edgy, you know?
Well, it struggled because of the Tommy Hill injury, and they stayed loyal to Tommy and gave him opportunities. And that situation created a lot more situations. It put Jeremiah Charles out on the field, probably in situations he wasn't ready for. Then it forced Tommy to go back out on the field when he wasn't healthy, and that was a disaster. And so when you have a corner that's not healthy, that people are going after, and then a corner that replaced him who was brand new, who wasn't probably ready for that stage. I mean, some of those things led to a lot. I mean, I think that was part of it. But yeah, the moment at Iowa with the tackling on the big run. I mean, that was one where Nebraska had like 7 guys that could have made that tackle, and a lot of it was the secondary players. They make that tackle, force the punt. They probably maybe win the game.
There's that game. The USC game comes to mind as one where we just were baffled by the secondary.
Yeah, Hartzog was guarding that tight end from USC, and it was just a mismatch.
Yeah, it was a mismatch. Now, the other part, I was really you described Dillon as a lightning rod. Is he a lightning rod?
I just think nationally there's people either love him or question him. I don't think there's much of a middle ground.
I think that's accurate.
And I think, I don't know, that we all know the talent's there, and I think we saw what he could be. And I always go back to that first half of the Illinois game where he just looked unbelievable against Brett Bielema, and then they adjusted, and the rest of the Big Ten began to adjust. And Nebraska's receivers, as we came to find out, it was not an elite receiver group last year.
They had trouble against man coverage
and getting open.
Right.
Yeah, they just couldn't create the separation to get open. And Fedoni was Fedoni. He was solid, but not a game-breaking tight end. They just didn't have a lot going. And then even at running back, it took a while before Emmett Johnson, and Dowdell was. I mean, it just didn't. It didn't. A lot of things didn't get going on the offense around Dillon.
Right, and it becomes that familiar conversation we've had here so often in recent years about, is there enough around the quarterback? That's what we got to see. Is there enough around him? We'll see. It's going to look a little different. Well, it's going to look a lot different at receiver. Do you have guys that can beat man coverage? Boy, it'd be nice to bring in a receiver here that nobody can guard in man coverage and they have to play zone. I mean, there's a guy that we're going to talk about later in the show named Alshon Jeffrey that they couldn't back in the day, 2011, 2010. Teams couldn't cover him man to man. They zone up. It'd be nice to have that guy, wouldn't it?
Well, even Samori Torre and Trey Palmer, and look, Jalen Lloyd is freshman year. I mean, they had guys that could get over you.
Yeah.
And do that. Jalen Lloyd didn't do that last year for whatever. It just didn't happen. Teams are ready for it. They scouted it. And he didn't play a lot either.
Andy, by the way, Andy Staples was with us on 3 national writer, and he went to the 8-4, I just feel like that's where to go. 8-4.
I need to ask Dean Hart, and we'll find out in a couple of weeks what he put.
Dean Hart, there's a guy we could add
for Lindy's.
Oh yeah,
because Tom Dean Hart does the Lindy's Big Ten stuff.
Oh yeah,
and Tom typically is more always glass half empty. He doesn't want to overhype Nebraska. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom said 7-5.
Okay, so Tom, I wonder if he has his. Okay, so he does the Lindy's predictions for the Big Ten. Do you think he has those done now?
Probably. I mean, it'll be on newsstands in about a week.
Oh, well, he's got to be done. Those magazines. Wait a second. Those magazines come out
Memorial Day.
Oh yeah,
it'll be that time of the year when I come to the office and you'll steal my magazines.
Does it ever feel like I just dropped out of outer space? Yeah, they've come out Memorial Day since the dawn of time, so they'll come out Memorial Day.
Yeah, coming up, and it'll be just like every year. You'll take. There'll be years where Sipple takes my mag and he starts writing in them and like circling stuff. I'm like, dude, get your own magazines. Like these are the magazines I'm taking on like my vacation with me.
Well, the circles and the markings you can still read.
It helps me. But all right.
So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, it's Lindy's and Athlon. Those are probably and then Phil still waits. Like he waits until like almost August on his.
As far as Andy goes, if you're a college football fan, Andy's got a better handle on those national subjects. He has a better handle on him than most people on earth. And
a lot of people don't know this, but Andy played at Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was a walk-on center. So not only does he understand it intellectually and can speak on the game at a high level, he played the game.
Right.
He played for Spurrier.
The double whammy.
I mean,
he can speak intellectually about the broader topics, and he knows the football topics, the pure football topics. Yeah.
Yeah,
he was good.
he's a valuable guy for On3.
Oh God, he knows the national part so well. Think about those guys. I'm always amazed by him, how he can talk specifics about Nebraska. Sean, he's got to talk specifics about 50 teams. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Oh yeah, his phone. Can you imagine his text log on a daily basis?
A lot of text log. He's got to learn a lot of teams. I bet, like, if you asked him right now about a rando team like Pitt, he could probably tell you a little bit about Pitt. He could probably tell you a little bit about Virginia Tech. You know, I don't even know who coaches Virginia.
Like
Tech.
90% of America couldn't tell you who their quarterbacks are going to be.
No, could you?
No, I couldn't.
Who's Virginia Tech's head coach? I don't know. People don't want to hear that, but I cover Nebraska.
All right.
Do you know?
Hard stop here. Before we go to headline 3, again, Husker Online Headlines is brought to you by StayHome.Care, our title sponsor. Call them at 402-205-2233 to learn more about what they can do for you and your loved ones. And we're also brought to you by Mando. And it was an early morning for Steve Sipple. We're both tired this morning. We're taping a lot earlier than we normally
Why are
would.
we so busy in May? That's the question I always have in my head.
Well, you got Mother's Day, you got Memorial Day, you've got kids' birthdays, family birthday. You got a lot going on. Graduations, a lot of things. But sometimes you don't have time to maybe take a full shower and get cleaned up. And that's where Mando has bailed Steve Sipple out more often than not. If you've never tried Mando, it is premium products, dermatologist recommended, comes in multiple different scents.
Yeah.
And we've got a great product for you. Try the Mando starter pack, and it's already heavily discounted right now. In fact, it's down to $35. You get 4 items on Mando's website: a stick deodorant, spray deodorant, a cream or a gel to use, as well as wipes. We'll take $5 more off that. So that $35 becomes $30 now with the discount code. I just did my own check on that yesterday to make sure I got it. So you can get 4 items for $30 with free shipping.
That's a steal.
At the Mando starter pack. That's promo code Husker at shopmando.com. You'll get $5 off the discounted starter pack with the promo code Husker at shopmando.com.
Mando to me represents staying power. It has much more staying power than any of the deodorants I've used since I was, an adolescent.
I mean, when we go out in public, people are like, "Man, what is that great smell?"
I don't think I've ever heard anybody say
and I'm
that.
like, yeah, that's him. That's that guy right there.
I've never heard anybody say that. But thank you, Sean.
God, what is that? It just smells like we're in just
smells like such a man.
Like a botanical garden. No, that's just simple. You put on the Mando today, sprayed it on.
Like lilac.
All right. Let's move into headline number 3. Ohio State. An Ohio State representative has introduced a bill to eliminate 11 a.m. kickoffs.
A crazy representative.
Like, what in the hell are we doing here? And I get it. Ohio State.
Tex Fisher's his name.
Ohio State fans don't like that when they play Penn State in Columbus, or Oregon in Columbus, or Nebraska, or anybody that would draw the number 1 television spot in the Big Ten. They have to play that game at noon Eastern, 11 Central on Fox's Big Noon Kickoff. And their fan base has almost gotten a big noon kickoff fatigue because they rarely get afternoon games or night games.
We would be leading the charge behind Representative Tex Fisher if Nebraska was in a situation like Ohio State where it played 7 games that kicked off at noon in one season.
Well, I do remember this, though. Back in the day in the Big 12, when Nebraska was ranked top 5, number 1-ish.
Okay.
There were, like, when they would play Notre Dame,
okay,
when they would play Oklahoma in Lincoln that same year, the 01 season, NBC or CBS, ABC would make that like the national window.
Okay.
And they would make Nebraska versus Notre Dame an 11 a.m. game.
Okay.
They would make Nebraska versus Oklahoma an 11 a.m. game.
That's fine. Was there 7 games though at 11 a.m.?
No, not 7, but
7.
That was Nebraska had to do that in those. I mean, that great Eric Crouch game where he threw the pass to beat Oklahoma. That was an 11 a.m. game.
That's 11 a.m.
Yes. And when Nebraska went down to Norman the previous year, That was an 11 a.m. game.
That's fine. We're not talking about 7 of them, though. So I get where, I mean, I totally understand where there'd be frustration in the Ohio State fan base, as do you. It would be bizarre if Nebraska played 7 noon games, right?
You know what's not
just bizarre?
Bizarre, though? A $73 million check.
Yeah.
That the Big Ten pays you.
That's the thing. That's why you got to acquiesce, kind of, right? If they told you to play at 3 a.m. on the moon, you just nod and say, okay, we'll have to do it.
Well, Nebraska played in Ireland. Now, the Big Ten had nothing to do with that.
Yes.
But yeah,
that was fun, actually.
But the Friday package is the another lightning rod in the conference that certain teams can get out of hosting Friday games. Like Iowa can use the hospital as like their shield to not host because of the parking situation on their campus with the hospital.
Didn't know that.
But because Black Friday falls around a holiday, the parking situation's better on campus for them.
Mm-hmm.
But Michigan, as we know, Penn State, Ohio State, they don't ever have to host a Friday game. But a lot of that, too, is their value to Saturday is much greater anyway.
Why are we talking about this? Because there's Ohio Representative Tex Fisher has presented a bill that is designed to almost entirely end those noon kickoffs for Ohio State. There would be heavy penalties, like $10 million for the conference or for Fox, whichever one they deem to be the one that makes it happen. $10 million fine. This just seems like a pie in the sky notion that they could get anything pushed forward. Right?
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. Could you imagine like when Ernie Chambers was our state senator doing something like this, or like any of our state senators, like in Nebraska, like currently Megan Hunt, Carolyn Boss, any of them? Like it's crazy to me that
maybe I can imagine them doing it, but I can't imagine them doing it with the idea that they're going to be successful.
To the point though, where it's going to take time away from like a lot of other things that need to be addressed.
But the constituency, a lot of the constituency is going to be nodding their heads and saying, yeah, we got to do something. That's the thing.
Because you could also argue, that it hurts their tax revenues by having these earlier games.
Absolutely.
Because
absolutely
not as many people enjoy the local fair when you have to get to the stadium at like 8 a.m.
Oh, I understand that sort of thing. I just don't think I just don't think you could get anything done with this. I mean, push this into becoming a law. I understand the arguments why you don't want to do it, but that's one thing. Making it an actual law is another. Now, maybe we're wrong. Maybe it does. Maybe it is valid and it could happen, but it just seems pie in the sky.
What I wish the Big Ten deal had more flexibility, where there were more weeks that NBC had the number one pick sometimes, where they had the night game. Or CBS, but it just seems the way it's set up, Fox kind of gets the pole position on the pick more often than not because they pay the most money.
Right.
But a lot of us would agree, and here's the Ohio State schedule, and you can probably, like Texas is going to be.
What will they do with that game?
Well, that's a home game in Columbus, right?
Yeah. So
that's an 11 a.m. game. The Michigan game's an 11 a.m. game on Big Noon. You know that the Penn State game will probably be a big noon kickoff game as well for them. But yeah, you wonder what the other games are that would even fall to big.
How
noon.
do you feel about Fox planting its flag in that time spot and saying this is where we're going to hold our big games?
They say it's because they feel like there's less competition, but the dirty secret of this is that Fox has Major League Baseball playoffs.
Dirty secret.
And they've hyped up Big Noon for what it is.
Okay.
But what it does is it allows them to air an elite college football game on the same day that Major League Baseball playoff games are played in the afternoon or the evening.
The dirty secret comes out.
Well,
good job, Sean. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The secret to it of Big Noon is Fox, because of their commitment to Major League Baseball and the playoffs, particularly, they are kind of landlocked, like on those Saturdays, 11 a.m. when they have, what happens? What do you do when you have to air multiple playoff games or World Series game?
No, completely makes sense.
They're not going to play a World Series baseball game at noon.
No, hell no. Wow. Sean, TV executive, travel agent, and media mogul.
But yeah, the baseball playoffs, I think, are a big driver of why Big Noon
makes sense.
And then Fox will say the ratings for Big Noon are great, but you could argue you put some of those games on at any time, the rating would be great.
God, that 11 a.m. kickoff discussion is really interesting from the standpoint of it's the coaches. I don't think many coaches would tell you, Sean, no, we like to play at 11. That's when we won our big game. I don't think so. I don't think many coaches would tell you that.
Some like to get the day going.
Yeah. Get it going at 5:30 a.m. I don't know. I understand why Fox is doing it. And I would tell you this, I like it. But I feel like I'm in the minority.
Am I crazy to say that I like the Friday night package?
No.
Like Fox football on Friday night.
I love it.
I mean, I actually think it's one of the better things they've done. I get
basketball too.
Yeah, just because there's nothing ever on Fridays.
No. And you don't go to Sandy's anymore, right?
And I get the whole
I know of. You don't go downtown.
No. The whole high school sidetracks band. I mean,
you're 44.
40. Yeah, no.
You're not 24.
Usually
at 24, you're getting a little old for that.
But those Friday night games, I think, are one of the smarter moves by the Big Ten.
Yeah. Both basketball and football. Real smart.
And the high school football crowd doesn't like it. I get it. But I don't think as many people get into or go to high school football games as they used to.
That's a tricky conversation because it depends where you're talking about. I hear that about basketball too, but you'll find full gyms for some games.
But not on Saturdays. Maybe Friday night big games, but Saturday high school gyms are half full. But when you talk about high school football Friday, you get occasional like Prep West Side, some of those games that draw really, really well. But a lot of times it's not. I mean, it's just not what it used to be because a lot of kids don't play in their neighborhoods anymore. They transfer and move around. High school football in general has kind of turned into a super team model in its own right.
Yeah, I can't push back.
So it's just different. So I have no problem with the Friday high school or the Friday college football games.
No, I don't either. But yeah.
All right. Let's get into headline 4. Before we do that, again, we're brought to you by StayHome.Care. Give them a call, learn more about what they can do for you, your loved ones. Simple tasks, cooking, cleaning, laundry, give you a ride places. They're there, and it's never too early to learn about them. Call them at 402-205-2233. All right, we're going to start a new trend here on Fridays in the off season. We're going to call it Flashback Friday. And we talked about this. We're going to start at a random moment, but our Flashback Friday, Steve Sipple, takes us to the 2012 Capital One Bowl in Orlando against South Carolina. That was Nebraska's first year as a Big Ten member. Mm-hmm. And specifically, we wanted to go back to a comment from Corey Raymond. Nebraska's
set the stage here, Sean.
And that was an era where we could talk to assistant coaches after games. So our post-game's easy because this is Matt Rule and like 5 players. But back in the day, you would talk to like every assistant. You'd kind of go through.
You could request assistants, and generally you would get them.
And you'd get good stuff.
And we found ourselves in one end zone of that, whatever stadium that was.
Camping World Stadium now, I think
it was, yeah. And you were in the scrum, I was in the scrum, and we were huddled around Corey Raymond.
And Corey Raymond, Nebraska lost to South Carolina.
He was a cornerbacks coach.
They lost to South Carolina. It was kind of a fluky game. They had an extra point blocked, return for 2. They had a Hail Mary to Alshon Jeffries right before halftime.
Right before half.
So they swung the game on those 2 plays.
They did.
Big time. But somebody was just trying to
30-13 was the loss.
Somebody asked the question about how do you match up, or what were the problems that you kind of had matching up with these guys? And he goes, look at them, look at us. Look at them, look at us.
He said it twice.
And basically what he was meaning, look at them. They're long, beautiful looking athletes, and look at us.
They had Jadeveon Clowney, Melvin Ingram, DJ Swearinger. He was their best player, by the way. It wasn't Clowney, wasn't Ingram. It was DJ Swearinger. But that was a jolt. Nebraska fans, That was very hard to hear. It caused a big stir. Do you remember what a stir it caused?
Dirk Chatlin was in that group with us too, and I can
100%.
remember his face just like dropping.
Well, a lot of people's.
Well, that was Corey Raymond's last game at Nebraska too. He moved on to LSU, but he just basically said, "Yeah, like we don't have the dudes that South Carolina had." But the thing is, that Nebraska team did have dudes.
It had Levante David. It had
Rex.
It had Rex and Amir. It had Jared Crick. It did. And Alfonso Dennard, who couldn't deal with Alshon Jeffrey, by the way, and then got ejected. Alfonso got ejected.
They got in a fist fight in the game.
That
was Nebraska's first year in the Big Ten, though.
Yeah, so it was a rough bowl game for Nebraska. Again, Dennard got ejected. Brett Maher missed a 35-yard field goal. Amir got hit at the 7-yard line of South Carolina. And you remember, Sean, the ball popped like 20 feet in the air. Remember that? It was tough. And then in the post game, to hear Corey Raymond say that. Why are we doing this for Flashback Friday? I'll tell you why. Because it was one of the most memorable quotes we've heard in our time covering the team, which in my case is 30-plus years. And in your case, is 20-plus years. It's one of the most memorable quotes we've ever had, right? Wouldn't you say that?
Oh, yeah.
Look at them. Look at us. It was a jolt. You don't want to hear that. You know that it's true, right? It's one of those things. You know that. South Carolina was a better-looking team. You don't want to hear it, though. It's one thing to know it. It's another thing to put it out in the ether.
But you could also push back and say, go a couple years later when Nebraska played Georgia and Jacksonville.
Right.
And that was an elite Georgia team.
It was.
In terms of talent. And Nebraska beat them.
Yeah.
And, they went in and beat
Nebraska
them in Jacksonville.
Looked like an SEC team at that point in a lot of ways.
But that Georgia tight end, and I forget his name, but he made the comment about Randy Gregory going into that game that he's the one player on the Nebraska roster that looks like he belongs in the SEC.
Ouch.
And it was kind of a slap. But Nebraska ended up winning the game.
Right. Ouch. You don't want to hear that stuff.
No.
That Nebraska did have other players, though, too.
Oh, yeah. No, it's
like Malik was on that team, Vincent Valentine. Those guys could play in the SEC, right?
Oh, yeah.
On the offensive side, you had a Nunwa. You had bodies that would work in the SEC.
And I want to say that was one of South Carolina's first double digit. Like they either won 10 or 11, but it was like the most win. That team had like its most wins tied for like one of its best seasons ever when they played Nebraska. I mean, Capital One Bowl back then was a good bowl.
That was Spurrier, right?
Yeah, it was Spurrier.
Yeah, their quarterback was Steven Garcia, which he wasn't great. That wasn't great. Alshon Jeffrey did not have a great year that year. His big year had come the previous year. He had like 85 catches the previous year. When he played the Nebraska game, that was his first 100-yard game in like 366 days. Like he had gone a long time between 100-yard games, but he looked good against Nebraska. Dennard didn't look like he was going to have any answers for Jeffrey. I thought Dennard was overweight that game. I don't know if you remember that, but I thought Alfonso showed up overweight.
Kind of little belly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to do this every
how about that for Flashback Friday?
Every Friday. And in the comments on YouTube or on Husker Online, if you got a flashback you want us to consider, drop it. We'll consider any of them.
Hey, Sean, maybe for Flashback Friday next time we should do a win. Like a victory.
You were fixated on this 2012. What I remember about that Orlando stadium too, it's like in kind of a rough part.
Yes, 100%.
I can't even share what our shuttle driver told me that day when we pulled in.
Yeah, I dealt with it to the extent that, you know what I forgot on that day? You have no idea this was going on. I forgot my readers. I didn't have any.
Well, there's nowhere by that stadium.
No, there's nowhere.
Like there's barely a McDonald's. I mean, because it's rough. Like it's not a good area.
I said to somebody, I got to go find some readers. And they said, well, Dad, you probably don't need to do that in this area. You don't need to go walking around. So I covered the game without glasses. And I had to, on my computer, I had to make the type huge, That's all I could do. That's the only shot I had. So yeah, it was a weird day. It was definitely a weird day.
All right. Final headline before we get to odds and ends. Again, we're brought to you by StayHome.Care. Give them a call at 402-205-2230. 888-848-9833 to learn more about what they can do for you and your loved ones at StayHome.Care. All right. Odds and ends. The Nebraska coaching staff took a trip to Sweden. Terry Braden went out to Sweden to meet with the family of 4-star 2026 defensive lineman Valdon Sone.
I don't care where you have to go to find defensive linemen. Find them.
But
I would tell my coaches, if you have to scour the earth to find these guys, scour it. Because we have the money to go travel and get it. We're at Nebraska. We're fortunate. We're not at Akron. We don't have to pinch pennies. We can go where we have to go.
Well, the strategy, though, is you have to visit the prospect on the same day you visit his family. So Nebraska had, a coach visiting
Terry Brady.
Sone at, in person, but then they also visited his family in Sweden.
Nice.
So like you have to kind of strategize that. You only can visit a prospect one time in the spring. And you on that same day, you can visit his family. And we've seen that strategy done before where I've even seen it where Nebraska visited a prospect's girlfriend that was close to him where she was out of state.
Wow.
and they visited the kid.
Wow.
I mean, you can do that, but that got my attention. And from reading the comments, Nebraska might have been the only team that's taken it that far to go to Sweden.
You can have a defensive line with a very distinct international flavor, a Swedish defensive lineman and a German defensive lineman. And by the way, David Hufkin, tell me he doesn't look like the most impressive physical specimen on the team.
He's all business too.
He is.
Like we talked to him at the youth camp and he's locked in.
Hufkin. I got to think he's going to be a factor.
He's got like over a 7-foot wingspan.
I just hope Nebraska fans understand we've seen all kinds of athletes here. He's one of the more impressive physically that you'll see. Hufkin. I will see what he can do. I watched him a little bit on, he played in the Husker games. He was part of that scrimmage action. That looked pretty good to me, by the way. Hufkin looks pretty good.
If he can just learn how to use his arms and extension, he'll be unstoppable.
I don't know if I want to say unstoppable, but he could be pretty good.
His levers and arms are so long that he can just move people. Like, I mean, if he's able to learn the techniques, I mean, he could be great.
How tall is he?
6'7".
How much do you think he weighs now?
255 plus.
Yeah, that's what he's listed as. He looks a little bigger than that to me.
Size 20, 21 shoes with over a 7-foot wingspan.
Yeah, that's got him. Next season, I think, is when you'd start to see him. I don't know about this season. Sean, number 53. I don't know if you'll see him this season. You might.
Maybe on a special team, PAT or something. You never know. Like, I mean, he'd be a guy you'd want to go in to try to block an extra pointer. With his length, if he can get up.
Yeah.
All right. Andy Staples did hit on this, but playoff seating changes probably coming for this year, meaning no more auto buys for the 4 highest ranked conference champions. I think that's the right move.
Straight seeding.
Yeah.
Straight seeding.
And I think the thought when they went to the 4 buys for the 4 champions, that's when Texas and Oklahoma were still in the Big 12. A lot of these things were different than when it was done before, where, like a Boise State or someone like that, are they really a team worthy of the buy?
The problem, what you get is you get like a 12th ranked team in the college football poll getting a 3 seed, an 8th ranked team getting a 4. It doesn't match up. So now they're just going to match it up with the college football poll.
Yeah, like Oregon had to play Ohio State. That just wasn't right.
No. And people, the commissioners see the issue, and it looks like they're going to get it rectified in time for this round.
It would be kind of petty if they dug in on it.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of petty in college football, though, but I don't think this is going to be an example of that.
All right, how about this? Tennessee could go back to Adidas. They left Adidas in 2014 to go to Nike. But their deal now is up. The window is open now to negotiate, and they've opened it up to take offers. And there's a thought that they could end up going back to Adidas. And we've seen back and forth with apparel partners. Wisconsin left Adidas to go to Under Armour. I think they probably have regretted that move.
Oh God, I would think so.
Because Under Armour has just went.
What happened to Under Armour?
They had a hard. I mean, they just aren't as strong as they used to be. They had some deals fall through. They had to get out of because they're going to afford them.
It didn't take
No.
They'd hope.
Like Notre Dame ended up staying with Under Armour, though. They were able to keep Notre Dame. But Nebraska is with Adidas through 2028. And I know there's a lot of people that, get angry. They want Nebraska to go tonight. I just don't ever see that happening. Adidas, to kind of give you an idea, pays
Ever?
No. Nebraska is the original Adidas school for football, the original. So they're the version of, like Texas Tech just left Under Armour. They had been with Under Armour forever to go to Adidas. You know why? Mahomes.
Yeah.
But
I mean, for Nebraska to leave Adidas, I think what you're saying basically is Adidas would have to sort of tail off to the level that someone like Under Armour has.
Yeah, and it won't even more than likely ever get to a point where Nebraska would open it up for new offers because Adidas would give them such a good renewal. They love Nebraska. And the Adidas deal right now goes through 2028. It pays Nebraska $128.7 million over 11 years. 64 million of that is cash. 64.7 million of it is product.
I'm team Adidas. Nikes. Have you ever seen me wear Nikes ever? They fit my feet funny. I don't wear them.
The thing about Nike too, I've heard this, is you don't, as a school, you don't receive the same service as you do with Adidas.
Really?
Like I was talking to a Nebraska guy about this, like when Tennessee switched from back in the day from Adidas to Nike, just simple like equipment, repair things that on jerseys, stitching, whatever they needed.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was harder to get those things done, where Adidas immediately takes care of those things. So there's little things, but the money too. Adidas is going to pay Nebraska more than Nike.
Boy, but those things you just laid out, that's important. Service.
Yeah.
Service.
At a Nike, you're just kind of another team. Where Adidas for Nebraska, they're treated as the team.
Apologies to any Nike reps that are listening to this.
Why don't you? I think if there was ever a time years ago, like in 2017, there was probably a better chance of it being Under Armour that was going to win that deal.
Wow.
Or tried to make
it. That didn't happen.
No. Well, because go back to that time, the Under Armour store at the Gretna Outlet Mall, for example, was the largest one in the country, or one of the largest ones. So
that's why I have an inordinate amount of Under Armour shirts to this day.
Because that Gretna store?
Yes. I have a strange number of Under Armour shirts. And strange old man shirts.
No disrespect, but I feel the thing I don't like about it just feels like their shirts and things have just stayed the same. Like just the product hasn't evolved a lot.
It's fair, Sean.
But we'll see. Yeah, Adidas could be getting Tennessee back in the fold. Big win for Husker baseball for Thursday. They were down 8-0
after 3,
and they came back and won by 2 runs,
11-9.
They've effectively now they have clinched.
They've clinched a spot in a Big Ten tournament,
and they're currently at 8. But they could get themselves up to like 7 or 6 if they keep winning. And Purdue has nothing to play for. They're out. So
they're out.
This is where if you're Will Bolt, you got to stomp on them. Then we'll get Jordy Ball this weekend too, softball and Baton Rouge.
Ball. I mean, you got to go beat the SEC teams. That's where softball is king. But Ball has had a spectacular. We talk about it all the time, but it's worth repeating. She had a spectacular season. What maybe some fans don't understand, casual ones, is she had 19 home runs, Sean. 19 home runs, and I think she hit I'm going to say 457. So not only she's by far and away their best pitcher, the ace of the staff, ace of the world, she is good at the plate. So they'll have a shot. But it's LSU at LSU, so it'll be tough.
All right. Well, thanks again to Andy Staples for joining us. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday. Signing off here for HuskerOnline Headlines, I'm Sean Callahan.